In this video, I'll cover everything you need to know if you're single, from icebreakers to first date small talk. Watch this video until the end to master the singles scene. This is from the book The Fine Art of Small Talk by Deborah Fine. So this is where it all starts. The chapter is surviving the singles scene. First, icebreakers for singles. I've been here before, but it's never been so crowded. Which way to the food or bar? I know exactly 0 people here. How about you? This food looks like it's pretty tasty. It looks like there are a lot of interesting people here. Do you know any of them? Would you please hand me a napkin? Friday afternoons are a great time for this kind of thing. Something to look forward to at the end of the week. I never know what to say, but I would like to meet you. So there's actually many ways of initiating an icebreaker. So one is a question, one is a statement like some of them were, like, this food looks like it's pretty tasty. And then the other person will just reply something linked to that, and then you start a conversation. Now the next part, here are some questions you can ask on a dating app, on the phone or in person. Question 1. If your company gave 1 year paid sabbaticals, what would you do for that year? Maybe he'd run off to a remote island in the Pacific or start his own business. Maybe she'd spend her days working in a soup kitchen. Whatever your date answers, this is a very revealing question, and a perfect one to ask on a first date. It reveals your date's true passions and priorities, showing you whether they are selfless, selfish, or overly ambitious. You'll also learn what this person cares about, but isn't making time for right now. Follow up with, are you doing anything like that right now? Obviously, she can't spend every day in the soup kitchen, but does she volunteer on weekends? And who knows, maybe you'll wind up bonding over your secret desire to play piano or start your own bike tour company. So that's a really good question because it's kind of like a psychological question. It on the surface looks like a normal question, but like it said, it actually reveals something about the person. It tells you about their mindset. So another question linked to that, similar to that, is you can ask them something like, if you won the lottery, what would you do? And then if they say, I'd go and blow it all on Gucci and designer clothing or a car, you know that they're probably a selfish person. If they say, I'd buy my mum a car because she's not got one, can't afford one, or if they say they'll invest, then you know they've actually got financial literacy. So again, it's another question that don't look like anything on the surface, but it reveals a lot about the person. Question 2. What's the biggest misperception people have about you? Maybe your date will say that everyone thinks he's snobby and stuck up, when he really is just shy. It's a good thing to know, especially if you've been sitting across from him thinking just that. You'll get a sense of how the person views him or herself, and it gives you the chance to take a step back and rethink your opinion of them. This is a great first date question, particularly if you make the disclosure first. For example, sometimes people think I talk too much, but I just tend to babble when nervous. Is there anything you do that you think gives people an off-base first impression of you? This gives you the opportunity to clear up any misperceptions your date might have about you, while also helping you know your real date without having to pry. Question 3. What's the one life experience you want a do-over on? Here's your chance to learn a juicy tidbit about your date's past. Does she secretly wish she went to culinary school instead of law school? Does he rue the day he gave up his pet cat to clinch that great no pets apartment? Everyone's got some regrets, and they speak tons about someone's character. Not sure how to segue into this heavy question? You're best off warming them up first with your own disclosure, whether that's how you wished you'd taken a year off after college just to travel, or quit a bad job before it became a really, really bad job. Just say, I'm pretty happy with how things are going right now, but the one thing I always wished I'd done differently is... How about you? So again, something I'll just take out of what I've just read that made me think. A lot of the time, they say something about themselves first to then lead on to the question that they want to find out, because if you just ask them a question direct and you haven't given anything to them, they feel either like it's an interview if you keep throwing questions at them and giving nothing back, and what it does, it kind of softens them up if you tell them something about you, because then they're like, oh, okay, he's told me this about the question that he's then asked me, I'll tell him about me. Question 4. Will you share an embarrassing moment with me? Is she secure enough to laugh at the time she gave a huge work presentation wearing her cycling shoes because she forgot to pack her work shoes? Can he share the embarrassment of falling off the chairlift his first time on a snowboard while trying to impress an ex? It's not the actual activity that matters. You want to know whether your date can be vulnerable around you early on. If someone's willing to share their private fiascos, you need to be ready to share some of your most embarrassing moments as well. In fact, it's probably best if you spill the beans first, and one easy way to do this is to say, "First dates make me kind of nervous, but I always remind myself it pales in comparison to the time, unbeknownst to me, I wore ketchup on my shirt during my first sales call." Question 5. If your house were on fire, what's the one thing you'd make sure to save? Want to learn whether your date is sentimental or practical? Find out whether he'd rescue his grandmother's signed Hank Aaron ball or his Apple Watch. This question gives you a sense of what's valuable to someone and whether your values coincide. Make sure to ask why they'd grab that particular item. You may find she'd grab her college diaries because those were amazing years when she learned and recorded so much about life, or that he'd grab his vinyl record collection since his parents collected as well. And if you're wondering how you bring up such an odd topic, consider an opener like, "I have a lot of interests and hobbies, but what's truly close to my heart is fishing. In fact, my tackle box is the first thing I'd grab if my house were burning down. That and of course my cat. How about you?" The next part, find the connection. While Suzanne says she loves playing the field, most people hope to find that special person with whom they can honestly connect. Think about the words connection and relationship. To connect, or relate, means to find commonality with another human being. You can begin looking for these connections as soon as you engage a stranger in small talk, by offering something about yourself and by asking questions of the other person. Keep in mind that when someone responds to your comment or answers your question, they usually give you more fodder for small talk. Connectors. You look totally at ease. I wish I could feel the same way you do. That's a great outfit. Pair of shoes, bracelet, necktie. I love fashion. Good taste. Jewellery. I almost stayed home to read a book instead of coming here. I love watching baseball, but this is fun too. I've never attended one of these events before. What's your experience with this organisation? How did you hear about this event? This is an interesting organisation. Have you tried any of their outdoor events like hiking or bicycling? It is so fun to finally meet up in person. Do your text conversations typically go on as long as ours have? And then follow up on the connections, the next part that links into the last one I've just said. The find the connection links into follow up on the connection. Consider the following approach when you ask a question or a question is asked of you. Think about how you will comment on whatever is said by your conversation partner. Here's an example. You. How often do you go out? Her. Almost every night. As she's responding, think about how to comment on what she's saying rather than on your next question. This exercise does wonders to sharpen your listening skills. You. Now that sounds like a lot of work. Comment on her response rather than asking a predictable follow-up question like, "Where do you like to go?" It takes a higher level of listening to make a follow-up comment than it does to ask a follow-up question. If you had a follow-up question in mind that you were tempted to use but did not, then you are on the right path, although you didn't follow with a question. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have had one at the ready. As a general rule, always formulate at least one follow-up question and keep it in your head, even if you may not use it. Instead of a witty, humorous follow-up comment, another option is to follow up with a disclosure. Let's see how this works. You. How often do you go out? Her. Almost every night. You. Really? I used to be able to do that. This time, a statement of self-disclosure rather than a comment keeps the connection going. It's also helpful to have relevant follow-up questions in mind. Most of the time, follow-up comments and disclosures will act as prompters. They'll usually prompt the other person to speak or to ask you questions. Let's revisit the example. You. How often do you go out? Her. Almost every night. You. Now that sounds like a lot of work. In this case, the follow-up comment will act as a prompter. Her. Laughing. Yeah, I know. It's like a full-time job. When you comment on someone's response, They will be prompted to say something in return. Use it as a connecting fuel. What do you do when there is not a response to the follow-up comment or disclosure? Use one of the follow-up questions that you formulated and patiently kept around in your head. Let's go back to the example we've been working with. You. How often do you go out? Her. Almost every night. You. Now that sounds like a lot of work. Her. Laughs but no response. You. Where do you like to go out? Here was a follow-up question that was relevant to the original question. How often do you go out? And her response to it, almost every night. Other potential questions could have been, where do you get all that energy, or how do you make so much time? Once you get into the habit of making follow-up comments and disclosures, adding in follow-up questions is a cinch. With creative use of these three elements, questions, follow-up comments, follow-up questions, the possibilities and variations in conversation are virtually limitless. As long as you stay focused on the conversation, you can keep it going. Now the next part, asking for that date. Now that you have successfully small talked your way through the single scene, you have a range of potential date mates, but actually asking for a date, putting your ego on the line and risking rejection, moves you to a whole different level. While Suzanne never calls a man for a date, Linda is adamant. Why shouldn't I be able to choose whom I'd like to go out with? Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I should just wait for some random person to choose me. She makes sure she's ready with the small talk whenever she phones a man for a date. First, I reconnect how we met. I refresh his memory about a couple of incidents at the event. I tell him how much I enjoyed our conversation there and mention that it would be fun to resume it over a coffee or lunch. As assertive as I am, I never ask a man out for dinner on the first date. It seems less threatening, both to me and to him, to suggest something more casual. My friend Bob offers this advice. Have some date ideas in mind before you pick up the phone. I will call a woman and say something like, there's a wine tasting at Hudson Gardens on Thursday night. I was thinking we could go to that early in the evening and then maybe take a walk along the river. Or we could get some dinner somewhere near the gardens. Note that he doesn't call the person he's interested in and say, what are you doing Saturday night? Which would offer her the perfect opportunity to answer, washing my hair. Invitations like, would you like to get together sometime, are too vague. Be specific in order to receive a direct answer. Bob's approach is to offer his potential date something specific for them to do together, and, by the way, something that sounds like fun, at least for the first few dates. Try to think of ideas that would appeal to your date rather than choosing something you like to do. Don't think that just because you like to go to the races, she will too. The best dating advice I've heard is from a man who never asks for a date the first time he calls, texts or emails. He exercises patience and waits until the second or third contact. Even then, he tries to suggest something that he might do with any friend, like a bike ride, a walk, or a gallery tour. This approach takes a little longer, but it builds real trust and affection before moving on to the heavier stuff. In the long run, he probably gets further faster and with a more satisfying outcome. Another piece of advice offering by my adult son that makes sense. Don't plan a movie, theatre date for the first few dates. Interaction is the key to getting to know each other. Try to empathise with the person who's doing the calling. Courage is required to anyone asking for a date. When asked, Friday or Saturday night, or what are you up for, a movie or some dancing, please do not answer with, whatever. A whatever response indicates one of two things, neither one of them positive. You either don't care about this person or the conversation, or you don't know what you want. A cheerful comeback. Saturday night sounds great, or I'd be happy to go dancing with you. Either night is appropriate. Now the next little subheading, on the date. People like to feel good about themselves. Dating is the perfect opportunity to do that for someone else. Make them feel like they're attractive and interesting. Focus on your date rather than worrying about what he or she is thinking of you. My friend Janie emailed me this story. I asked my date questions for 2 straight hours. He was very self-absorbed and asked zilch about me. And then there was silence, so I said to him, okay, now you ask me some questions. He thought a minute and then said, so how am I doing? Definitely not a keeper. Another friend tells the story about a guy she dated who was intensely connected with her as long as he was doing the talking, but as soon as she took her turn, his eyes would wander all around the room. She had listened politely and actively, and now he was sending her the message that she was boring him. She watched it happen for the last time when they went to dinner at an outdoor cafe. He was able to ignore all the beautiful women walking past, as long as he was doing the talking. But when her turn came, he would look beyond her, over her, anywhere but at her, in order to glimpse some attractive woman. My friend was hurt and offended. She got up and left, telling him, "You don't need me here. You can just talk to yourself and keep company with all the beautiful women walking by." The next part, initiating the date small talk. "It was great to meet you at ... I hope you had as good a time as I did. Hey, I wanted to add something to our text conversation the other night ... You mentioned ... Do you have any idea where I can find one? I really enjoyed our conversation about and felt like we kind of connected on that issue/topic. Would you like to go out for coffee this weekend so we can continue the discussion? You mentioned to me that you like contemporary art. The art museum has a ... exhibition until next month. Would sometime in the evening this week work for you? I remember you said that you were a fan of ... I enjoy him too. Do you want to go see his latest film sometime over the weekend? Your profile noted that cooking was a passion. How about a cooking class together at ... Now the next part, first date small talk. It's great to see you again. I'm so glad you were able to ... with me tonight. Tell me about your day. So, tell me a little bit about yourself. Who was your best friend growing up? How do you celebrate your favourite holiday? What do you eat for lunch? Did you go away to college? Where does your family live? I have 2 brothers and a sister. How about you? Tell me about your family. What brought you to the city? Do you have any pets, hobbies, favourite activities during this season of the year? How do you like to spend your free time? Now, thriving in the singles scene. Feeling comfortable and confident in conversation is the best way to not only survive, but to thrive being single. Knowing how to chat helps you to make new friends and enrich old friendships. Practice helps, so put yourself out there where you're forced to small talk with other singles. So I actually heard something on this very recently, and someone asked a guy called Luke Belmar, which is a lot into finance and philosophy, and they asked, how do you get good at communication? And he literally just said, talk to people. And it's true. Like everything else you do, the more you practice, the easier it becomes, and once you're good at it, it's even fun. Don't be afraid of looking dumb or saying the wrong thing. Laughing at yourself is the best way to develop a sense of humour, if you don't already have one, and, at the same time, make people feel less threatened by you. Every conversation is an opportunity to connect. We dismiss people because they are not our type, or don't participate in certain activities, or are not the gender we are attracted to. Observing friends and family in the dating pool in recent years, I see the stark differences and unique benefits of different kinds of apps. Some, like Tinder, offer the ability to meet as many as your sore swiping thumb allows. Hundreds of matches and non-matches as rapidly as your thumb can scroll. This very fast-paced, unending resource allows for a quick look, but other apps allow few matches, some only matching you with one person each day. This requires more practice, more patience and thoughtfulness, and exploration beyond the posted pictures. And although appearance is an ingredient, there is lots more to ponder before moving forward to reach out to someone on these more selective apps. With pluses and minuses to both approaches, when using any dating app, remember to be intentional about your goals, whether it's just to meet people or make a real, lasting connection. It was my wonderful friend Karen Thomas who announced at our book club meeting 30 years ago that she had someone in mind for me to meet, and thanks to her thoughtfulness and generosity of spirit, I was introduced to her periodontist, now my husband, Steve. Ask to be fixed up. Don't hesitate to ask friends to keep you in mind, and never dismiss someone because they are not your type. This person could become your friend and introduce you to your future partner. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about communication, then the book is actually in the description, so you can get it there if you want to. Please like if you learnt something new, and subscribe to learn more. If you haven't watched my other videos on this book, or the next video on this book is out, then the playlist will be on screen now. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.